introduce you if you don't mind. So Aaron
No
Finch
worries.
is joining us tonight. We appreciate that. And again, he's got a bachelor's degree and an MBA. And the big high points of his career, including what he's doing right now, is that he was a co-founder of Coinstar. And that's a pretty big company at this point. And maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that. But Aaron is also a mentor and a CEO to early stage startups, as well as companies that are active and running, and is doing a lot of coaching as well. And he has a personal connection to Mark Maddock. And so Mark had got in touch with him. And Aaron, we're privileged to have you tonight. So thank you for joining us, and you are on.
Yeah, so Coinstar. So everybody's seen the big green coin counting machine in the front of your supermarket. One of the interesting things about Coinstar, which as we were raising money, many VCs told us the dumbest idea they'd ever seen. But it turned out that we got a few VCs to back us and go forward with it. And so Coinstar, we started in 1992. And what I'm going to talk about tonight relative to Coinstar is how we identified the problem that we were solving, and how we went about confirming that it was a real problem and was worth solving. Okay, so Coinstar, we started in 1992. We ended up going public in 1997. It's now been taken private again by Apollo, which is one of the largest PE firms in the nation. So the last information I have on Coinstar itself, the Coinstar side of the business, is about 3 or 4 years old. But at that point in time, Coinstar was generating about $350 million a year in fee revenue and was spinning off about $100 to $150 million in cash every year. So we created this very high margin, valuable service with something that people didn't know even existed. There are about 20,000 Coinstar machines across the country and the world right now. And then the follow-on product for Coinstar was Redbox, the whole idea of self-service retail and managing remote technology. So Redbox got built out to be a significant business. It's obviously, in the age of streaming, not as strong as it was. And also they have a business called Eco ATM now. So at its peak, the market cap was about $2 billion. So from the worst idea ever to $2 billion market capitalization, we were pretty excited about that. What I'm going to talk about a little bit today, and what I want to share with you, is design thinking approach to identifying an opportunity and to verifying that the opportunity is real. And it's how do you go about proving out your idea before you start spending a lot of money on it. So this model comes from the Stanford D School, the design school at Stanford University. And I've included a link here to their website. There's tons of really valuable information. That if you want to do a deeper dive into what I'm talking about, this is the #1 resource to look at how to do customer interviews, how to define a problem, how to ideate solutions, how to do prototypes, and how to test those prototypes. So this is a model that Stanford developed several years ago and has become quite kind of the standard on thinking about design thinking on solving problems. To begin talking about Coinstar, though, you have to talk about Jens Molbach. So Jens was a classmate of mine at Stanford Business School. And he grew up, his parents immigrated from Denmark to the United States, to the Seattle area, with literally coins in their pocket. They were as poor as you could possibly be. They did know about growing plants, though, so they started a small horticultural business outside of Seattle in a place called Woodinville. And ultimately, as Jens was growing up, this became the largest retail horticultural center in the US under one roof. They built this very, very successful business. Also, as part of that business, they grew poinsettias for Christmas time. And his job as a child growing up was to wash the pots. So you had to, as you transplanted the poinsettias, as they grew, you put them in bigger pots. You had to wash those pots so that they wouldn't spread disease around. So his parents used this chore as a life lesson for all their kids. They paid them a penny a pot, not 10 cents, not a dime for 10 pots, but 10 pennies for 10 pots. And they would then, at the end of the summer, when they're all done, they would take those to the bank, and the bank would spin them up in their coin counting machine, and they deposit in a savings account, and a savings account was for education. So they taught all these lessons: hard work, saving money, education, and they really communicated all these priorities to it. Through that, Jens became a coin hoarder. So he goes off to college and he has a 5-gallon bubble top glass container, which he then fills with coins as he's accumulated them during college. And then he has a job on Wall Street and he's putting more coins in it. And so he heads back to the West Coast to speak before Stanford. And he hauls this back to this coin jar in his old broken down Saab car that he had forever. And he takes it back to Seattle and he goes to the old bank that he used to get coins from as a kid. And they were like, sorry, we don't do that anymore here. And so he took it to another bank and they were like, wait, we don't do that here anymore either. And he took another one and we don't do that. You have to put it in the little paper wrappers and bring it in. He said, that's horrible. There's got to be a better way. So you think about the opportunities. Basically what your entrepreneurial journey begins with is identifying a problem or a customer need that you're going to solve. And if you don't have a customer problem or need you're going to solve, you're not going to have a business, right? So that's the first identity. And a lot of those come from your own personal experiences. So Jens went through this experience and went, okay, this is a problem. I'm not going to put all these coins in a paper wrapper. I wonder if I'm the only one with this problem. I wonder if other people would have this problem as well. And so how do you go about doing that? And that's this portion of design thinking called Empathize. It's where you go and you actually talk to real customers. So this is, at this point, this is our second year, about right at the end of our first year, second year of business school. And he shares this idea with me. We become friends and he knew I had an operating background and things like that. And he was trying to figure out how to do this. And so what did we start with? We started with customer interviews. So they say that for commercial B2B projects, you need to do at least 50 customer interviews. For B2C projects, you should do 200 customer interviews at least. Okay, so we went out in front of a Draeger supermarket in Menlo Park and we talked to 200 different consumers. And here's what we did, and it's not a survey, you're just trying to ask, you're having a conversation more. So we had this conversation about, tell us about your coin usage, how you use coins, what coins are in your life, what your relationship to coins are. Do you save them? Do you spend them? Do you throw them away? And which is interesting, how many people actually threw pennies away. It's kind of an interesting finding. But what we discovered is 75% of these 200 people accumulated coins at home in some kind of jar or container. They estimated they had $25 on average, okay? 38% wrapped and took those coins to the bank, and the emotions that would come through was the frustration they had was the essence of the problem. And so what you're really looking for when you're doing these customer interviews is you're looking for those strong emotions. And this is where the point that we really came through strongly is people hated having to wrap their coins to take them to the bank. Half of the people we talked to said, yeah, I'd use some kind of coin service to turn these into money, and I'd pay to do that as well. So when you started doing the math of half of the grocery shoppers in the country that have $25, and you multiply that out and we realized how big of an opportunity this had the potential to be on that end. So this is the Empathize size where you're actually going and talking to real people who you think your customers are. Now, what was unique about coin is everybody uses coins. So we had this broad base, but part of what you may be doing is you may have more of a niche product. You have to really try to identify who that customer is that you're talking to and that customer is that you're working with, that you're trying to solve. Because if you're not talking to the person with a problem, you're probably not going to get positive results from that. So you're really in this Empathize stage. You're doing this dance of figuring out who are my customers, what are my customer segments, and then what is their problem that needs solution, and how do they identify with that problem. The other thing you do during Empathize is you go do some market research, right? You Google it. We didn't have the internet yet when we were doing this, but we had a really good library at Stanford that you could get this data from. Now this part is so much easier with the tools that you have. But something that we learned is we learned that the US Mint had produced $14.2 billion in coins at this point in the last 30 years. It was a little less than 30 years. In 1988, the Mint estimated that 7.7 billion in those coins were still in circulation. So that begs the question is, where did that missing 6.5 billion go? And we were like, wow, if we could go mine that, that's got to be someplace. If that's sitting on people's dresser tops and in their cars and in piggy banks and on kitchen shelves, there's a business here to go mine that 6.5 billion. We also learned that each American handled at that point in time is probably lower now because cash transactions are probably lower. I'm guessing, I haven't seen the data, but each American handles about $300 in coins every year. So we're also like, wow, this is a recurring business. They're going to have to keep coming back again and again. They think they have $25 at home. They're handling 300. Boy, if they started hoarding more because they could easily convert it at Coinstar, we might really have something here. So what we were learning through this empathize stage is there is a business. This is a problem. And we got really strong emotions about what the banks are making us do. The banks aren't taking my coins anymore. So the next stage is trying to clarify that. So as you kind of, the next thing is trying to make a clear statement out of what is that problem you're trying to do. It's the beginning of your elevator pitch, right? It's a real clear definition of who your customer is, what their problem is, and the emotion, the reason that problem exists. So in the case for Coinstar, point of view statement is frustrated. Notice those strong adjectives for things like frustrated, consumers with a jar of coins at home. They need a convenient way to turn their coins into cash because greedy banks don't count your coins for free anymore. So a point of view statement is a who, right? That has some kind of need that's defined and then a reason behind that. What you're trying to do is really get as concise as possible what your problem is, who your customer is, and why that problem exists. So then you can start coming up with a solution, right? Instead of a long drawn out 20-minute explanation of what it is, this is your real quick, this is who my customer is, this is what their problem is, and this is why they have that problem. The next phase is then you have to figure out, how am I going to solve the problem? This is the ideate phase. So there's a lot of ways to think about it, but one of those is asking how might we solve this problem? And coming up with a lot of different ways to go about it. We looked at a lot of different solutions to this coin problem. Maybe we could come up with a really handy coin roller that we sold to people and they would have at home that was lightweight. Maybe we could, maybe we could like have a delivery truck that you call us. You remember the internet didn't exist yet, so they couldn't call us on the internet, right? We couldn't have an app for that. They'd call us and we'd bring the truck with a coin counter in it. We count all their coins and hand them cash, and then we'd go take care of the coins later. And we thought about that. What we did come up with is the ultimate solution, is which Coinstar is today, is a recurring revenue business model. So when you think about it, what a recurring revenue business model is, it's one of those things, is like any kind of SaaS software service now with a long-term contract. That's one of their strengths, recurring revenue model. Mobile telecommunications, recurring revenue model. Cable TV, recurring revenue model. What's really unique about those, we'll talk a little bit more in the future, but there's a lot of value to having a recurring revenue business model if you can. The model is the company would own the network of self-service machines rather than selling machines or leasing machines or creating a franchise where we were selling machines to franchisees. We also decided, let's locate these in grocery stores. Why? It's the #1 visited spot away from the home except for your workplace. The average grocery shopper visits the grocery store over two to 3 times a week. And so ready traffic there, you're already on your way, make this something that you do along your regular journey. Very attractive economics. We had less than a year payback on our installed cost. And we were able also to build a moat with real estate and scale. Basically, the idea of a moat is that competitive advantage that makes it hard for somebody to come in. We realized once we had owned the real estate of density in each individual critical market, and we'd scale to that size, it'd be very difficult for somebody else to come in. And one of the strengths of recurring revenue model is that consistency of revenue allows debt financing, which is you're funding your business, you start and you're selling equity to build your business, you're selling parts of your business, and you end up with less and less of that. And if you can put a layer of debt in there of some kind, because of your business model, it allows you to maintain a lot more of the value for yourself. I'm seeing I have a low battery call and I don't have my plug near me, so I'm going to kind of hurry here and then might have to run and grab my plug to do a Q&A. Forgive me if I disappear, I'll be right back, just as a heads up. So anyway, that's kind of that process that you will go through as you try to identify who's my customer, what is the problem I'm solving for them, and then how am I going to do that? What does my business model look like to do that? So the last thing I'd like to share is just from a standpoint of, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and these are kind of my go-to resources for thinking about this early stage of identifying your business opportunity and how to make a business out of that problem you're solving. So one is the Stanford D School we already talked about. The Lean Startup by Eric Rice is kind of a classic, and it's been around a while, but it's very much how to do this iterative problem solving as you go forward. A business model canvas was my favorite tool to look and analyze a new business idea and all those things you need to put in place. Business model generation is the Bible for doing business model canvas. The innovator's method really kind of takes design thinking, lean startup, and BMC and combines it all into one book and one place to go. So if you're going to read one book, it's that one. And then probably my favorite one, and I forgot to put his name on here, I feel so bad. It's BE 2.0. So the original book was Beyond Entrepreneurship. It was written by Jim Collins. I was lucky enough while I was at Stanford, before Jim Collins was Jim Collins of Good to Great, Built to Last, all those amazing business books, and he became incredibly famous from it. He was a lecturer at Stanford Business School, teaching entrepreneurship. And so he with another one of the entrepreneurship professors there wrote Beyond Entrepreneurship, and it was our Bible as we were building Coinstar. It was really our guide on creating your company values, setting a company vision, setting goals, and putting all those pieces together at the beginning of creating a great enduring business. And so forgot to put Jim Collins' name on it, and he would be really upset with me if I did that. I didn't actually name him on it, but an excellent book, an excellent tool. Beyond Entrepreneurship 2.0 is an update, and he's taken a lot of his learnings from everything that he's done with Good to Great and all the other books he's written, and included and added anecdotes into this, and how those learnings relate back to what was in his very first book. So a great resource as well.